Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 0 to 60, and today we're playing with
the Supercharged M5. We're going to find out what's, well, hopefully narrow down what is causing the leaning out issue at RPM.
Now, I think, Dave, before we go into what we're doing today, which will probably be the title of the video anyway, but give the viewers a quick rundown on how we've gotten to this point today.
And what actually happened. Okay, so when I had the car, there was, once I actually got it back on the road and working properly, noticed that it was leaning out a little bit under crazy driving. So, thanks to the AFR gauge, the first thing to change, it still had the stock fuel in-tank fuel pump, so I put a Walbro 450 in there, and that fixed it straight away, and we're all good. After that, it was in December for roll racing, ended up getting a HTE custom tune. He was logging it for us, and it was perfect. AFRs were awesome. The car was running brilliantly.
Now, that's something we want to reference because we've got all those logs from December where obviously we're keeping an eye on fuel. AFRs.
Yep.
And just make sure the car was running perfectly. And it was then. So with the first Walbro 450, the custom tune from HTE, the car was rapid, but then about 3 weeks after the custom tune, it started leaning out again.
Yeah, it went to roll racing, it kicked ass, but then, yeah, 3-4 weeks after that, noticed that it started leaning out again. And so the first thing to change at the end, I thought maybe the Chinese Walbro that I put in, not so good. So I bought a brand new pump, put it in, and it made zero difference, absolutely nothing. In all of that, also changed all of the fuel line inside the tank in case something wasn't quite right, because the old one, it was very brittle, it was a bit old, so
refreshed all those lines.
Again, zero difference at all. The next thing along the fuel system was obviously the fuel regulator. Again, it's a very high kilometer car, replaced that, and
no difference.
Not really, no. And then the last thing left, really, was the fuel filter. And again, being a high kilometer car, it could have been blocked up a little bit and causing it just in that high RPM. So that was the last video. I changed the fuel filter, and I actually thought that was going to be it. But out doing some pulls, and it was the same thing. It's still leaning out at high RPM.
So that leaves us, and obviously because these S62s don't have a fuel pressure sensor, it left us with the need to actually check the fuel pressure at the rail when it's under high load. And we didn't have a fuel pressure tester kit, but we did go onto eBay and found the most complex one in the world. We actually bought this pressure tester kit thinking it's got a million hoses, all these different fittings. It's definitely going to be able to connect it up to the car. And the other night we actually thought we'd just test fit it, and it didn't connect. And we actually ended up having to buy a few other little quick necks and adapters and extra line to loop it around. But we now have it connected.
Yeah, and so we could have just jacked the car up and got underneath it and put the Schrader valve onto the fuel regulator for the pressure tester, but it's bloody low, and I didn't really want to be driving at the top of third gear with all those
hose hanging down,
pointing down to the road, which is why we spliced into it there.
Also, and I think it's more important to actually get rail pressure, and we are 6 inches from the fuel rail, where we've tapped in there, so that's going to be the best place to do it. We've mocked up a basic sort of what we're going to do when we go for a drive, but Dave, I think what we should probably test now, we did actually prime it just before. Should we prime it again? Just start the car, just make sure this is reacting how it should, and just make sure it holds pressure when you shut the key off as well, just in case there's a weird fuel bleed leak or something. So you just start it up, and we'll just make sure it idles at the right pressure. Oh, dude, that went straight around to 72.
72 straight away?
Yeah, it's gone back down to 65 now, so I don't know if that was the regulator bleeding off or whatever it is.
Right, you ready?
Yep. So there we go, it's holding just over 60 PSI. I think these are supposed to be around 5 bar, aren't they?
It's a 5 bar, so...
Oh, it's coming up a little bit.
It's nearly 70 PSI, is that 5 bar?
Yeah, it is. It's just over 70 PSI, so we're about, I'm going to mix imperial and metric, about 4.3 bar right now, 4.4 bar, or about 62 to 63 PSI. And you can see it fluttering. Do you want to just, there's not much heat in it, just bring it off idle gently. Yeah, I'd say that reacts properly. Give it a little blip. Yeah. Oh, as soon as you blip it, the fuel pressure ramps up. So I think these have a smart fuel pump controller. All right, kill it, and we'll just make sure it holds pressure when we turn everything off. Okay, that dropped down to about 59 PSI.
Okay, see if it bleeds.
And what we're going to do, and give that 2 minutes just to make sure there's no fuel bleeding around the regulator or doing anything weird. And you'll see us after the intermission. Okay, while we're just waiting the few minutes for that, you turn the ignition on and it just primed again.
Ah, my bad.
He put the additionals, put the windows down, but we'll let that keep sitting there. If anyone's wondering, these rags are not to absorb fuel. It's just because where the intake manifold rubs up against this trim panel here, hopefully the GoPro's picking it up, we just didn't want the metal clamps to scratch or damage anything. So it's not there for fuel, it's just there to protect scratching.
It's probably worth noting actually that those fittings are actually thread locked, and if you are doing something similar to this at home, it's probably worth making sure that you do not have any fuel leaks at all, especially if you're going to start getting the engine very warm right near the headers there.
Should we tell them this actually took about an hour and a half to set up? No, don't tell them. Don't let them know. But yeah, we've been over the top with making sure it's safe and not going to have fuel leak and everything's going to be good. That's not going to reach, is it?
It's not ideal.
No. All right. I think we'll work out something there. How's that pressure going? Dude, it's holding pressure. Now, the reason we wanted to see if it lost pressure with the key off is just in case there's any issues with the O-rings in the injectors or anything like that. Often, I shouldn't say often, but it can happen where the O-rings on the injectors will leak, and at wide open throttle, that minuscule leak will just be enough for it to lean out. Yeah,
even if there was an issue in one of the lines or hoses anywhere else, it could also be, when you're at full wide open throttle, that could just be enough of a bleed to just drop pressure a little bit for it to start leaning out.
Mind you, I guess if the O-rings were leaking on the injectors, it would have been greeted with a lot of fire by now, which we haven't been greeted with yet. But we do have an extinguisher in the car for this trip. Dude, I'm happy with that. Let's get loaded up. We'll get the engine warm and we'll go do a wide open throttle pull and just see what this fuel pressure's doing.
Just through the screen?
Yeah, I think we just tech screw it in. We'll get some wood screws or something. That should be fine. All right. See you guys in a second.
Okay. I think we're about ready to hit the road. I thought I might mention, because nearly every video of this car that goes up, somebody comments on the mirrors, on the standard E39 mirrors, and why they say that it's not an M5. This particular car, if you've been keeping up with the videos, you'll know that it was Ali owned it down in Sydney, and he modified it and spent a lot of money on it, taking care of it. But I actually bought it off, well, not from him, from an auction after it had a bit of a rear ender. And after I got the car, I got sort of what I thought was a mate to actually do the repair and the paint. And long story short, that's why. Yeah, turns out he wasn't a great mate, and
he did a shit repair and didn't give David his bits back. So
essentially,
got him in the end. But we've still got to get the mirrors painted, the roof trims, the whole car needs a wet sand. It'll be good in the end, but it's still a work in progress. In the meantime, let's go and have some fun with one of the best sounding cars in the world. All right. Ali did actually put a few gauges in there. We got oil pressure, oil temp and boost. I think the oil temp doesn't work at the moment, but we mainly just monitor boost and AFRs when we're doing these tests. And yeah, actually I'll just reset boost. Cool. And we opted to hold the gauge. This is fine. So we can monitor the fuel pressure there. So around 65 PSI. I think cruise out. We'll show them what fuel pressure does just while the engine's still cold. Actually, it's probably not cold, is it?
it has come off of its bottom dial. Oh!
That race clutch that Ali put in. Yeah, man, she sits about 4.5 bar, so maybe a little bit lower than it should be, but this is a brand new rag. Oh well, we'll see what it does when we get out on the road. All right, I'm going to hold that in a very weird position. You'll see this shortly. All right, just show you guys, we're just cruising along at about 60 kilometers an hour, and under constant throttle, the gauge does go up to about 70 PSI. Which means the fuel pressure rag is working. It drops fuel pressure under light load, which is what I think it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and to be fair, the AFRs seem normal under every driving circumstance until it gets to the very top of the RPM range.
In third and fourth gear.
Wide open throttle, yeah.
All right. We'll get some more heat to it and we'll do a pull. I just thought I'd give a little bit more of a, I don't know, try and help you guys understand what's going on. Basically, in third gear at wide open throttle, as this car gets to about 5,000 RPM,
yep.
Yeah, it starts to lean out. So it's got good AFRs around, well, low 12s to be fair,
yep, until
about 5,000 RPM. And then between 5,000 and 7,000, it leans out to 14 we've seen, which is pretty bad. Yeah. You don't really want to see 13s at wide open throttle, let alone nearly 14. So what we're thinking is there's some sort of issue with the way we've done the fuel pump, maybe, like some of those lines, although we've replaced them twice now, can't see any issues. But what this will show us, if there is an issue with the fuel pump, as we get into those RPM ranges at wide open throttle, the fuel pressure should drop. Just watching it come along the road then, it holds 70 PSI if the throttle's being touched. So if it's not on vacuum, we've got 70 PSI of fuel, and I'm guessing that it's gonna drop down to like 40 or 50 PSI at wide open throttle.
Yeah, well, oh, we're off.
Anyway, we'll see what happens shortly. Is it gonna lose PSI? Or is this an injector problem?
Well, that's it. If you've either got pressure, if the pressure's good all the way from the pump to the gauge, then
Something's happened to the injector.
Yeah, the only thing left is the injectors after that. But if it's dropping pressure at wide open throttle, it's a fuel supply issue.
So here we go, guys. Let's see what this fuel pressure does.
It wasn't too bad, the AFRs then, but just before I let off, it went from like 13.4 to 14, like just snapped like that.
So it's still leaning out, but we've got fuel pressure. Well, at least we know we didn't mess up whatever's in the fuel tank.
One positive, I guess.
All right, I think we don't need to do another one. It leaned out and it held fuel pressure, so...
So did it stay at 70?
It stayed at about 75.
The whole time?
The whole time.
Sweet. I love those Chinese Walbros.
Yeah, fuel pump's good, but that means there's an injector problem.
Yes. Look, it's done a lot of Ks. It's had the Supercharged kit for a long time.
Well, let's head back. We'll give you guys a summary of what we're going to do next. Didn't even need to use that. Right, Dave, what's the plan? Actually, we probably should tell the audience as well. So this was first leaning out when you first started driving the car, wasn't it?
Yeah.
On the ESS factory tune.
Yes, correct.
It would lean out.
Yep.
So then we replaced the fuel pump, and then we had safe AFRs.
Yep.
Then we went custom tune. Everything was sweet. And then it started to lean out about 2 or 3 weeks later. Now, we did wonder if there was some weird adaptation thing going on with the custom tune. So we did put the ESS tune back on, and it still leaned out. So this, and then we put it back to this tune, just trying to not change too many things at once. So it's definitely not a tune thing. It is a hardware problem.
Yeah, and after those pulls just then with that pressure gauge, we can also rule out the possibility of it losing fuel pressure.
Yeah, it's something between where we've got that tapped in and the cylinders, and the only thing really there is the injectors. Yep. Now, these are ESS upgraded injectors. Yep. They're the white injectors, and apparently they were an option when you bought your ESS supercharger kit. If you were going to run a bigger pulley, they would supply these white injectors. They're still pretty small injectors, aren't they? They're about 380 cc.
Yeah, they're not very big.
Yeah, I guess they're good for 8 PSI on 98, where Dave's end game with this is 9 or 10 PSI on E85, so he's going to be needing a bit more fuel. So you will need upgraded injectors at some point. Yeah. So I guess that's the next in line. Yeah. But the conundrum is, what injectors do you use?
I've been looking at prices, and they don't seem to vary much from going... like a 600cc injector should be fine for the power. They don't really seem to be any more expensive to go from 600 to 1000cc. Yeah,
and we should just ask, if anyone's got the hookup on Bosch EV14 full-length injectors, that's what you need, isn't it? With an extended tip.
I think they're 3/4 length.
Oh, 3/4 length with
an extended tip.
The donkey dick looking injectors. If you've got any links to where to get them cheap, let us know, because...
Actually, I know there are a couple of guys that do watch these videos with ESS cars, and some are even way more modified than standard ESS kit. So if you guys have already put bigger injectors in, if you know what injectors I should run, what you recommend, then yeah, please let me know.
All right, let's end it off there. But we know it's not a fuel pressure issue. Man, I just want to get this fixed. I miss being out in this thing. For those 2 or 3 weeks when it worked, it was such a fun car.
It is, and how good it sounds to stand doing that. We just need to be able to beat on it without hurting it. That's the goal.
And get the mirrors fixed.
Yeah, and then get it looking pretty. It'll be worth it in the end.
And then tune it for like 700 horsepower.
Yeah, easy.
All right. Guys, we're going to end off there. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Peace out.